All right, YouTube, Matt Kennedy here. Welcome to my house series, continuing for the 20-some-year-old buying their first home. And again, I appreciate all the interest and just the respect from you guys for hearing me out in my first home. And it's one of those things where there's really two reasons I'm doing it. Number one, to educate other people who may just know nothing about homes, and they might end up going in the next few years to start their home search. So like, why not start now? Number two is more like memories. I can always watch this as long as YouTube is not going out of business in 30 years. 30 years, hopefully, if it lasts, I'm there for 30 years, I'll be able to look back at these videos and laugh and just, show my students, show my colleagues, show my friends, my family, just, where I was, because this is something that we couldn't really do, 30 years ago because, yes, we had those, handheld video stuff, but clearly videos are way easier to make nowadays. So thanks for the interest. Let's go on. The first thing I want to first of all talk about are my details. So people should know by now, if you don't already know by now, I got a home through Ryan Homes, and it is a condo listed as a townhome, but for some reason it's a condo through the contract. So I am only going to be responsible for pretty much the inside of the walls. Lawn care, snow removal, roof, structure of the home, cutting grass, all that goes into the 205 HOA a month, which, as we know, can sadly only increase. But at the end of the day, even though it could be cheaper to do all that stuff yourself, it's honestly just something I don't got to worry about as a single person. Yes, yes, there is work to be done. Yes, you want to be hardworking, whatever. I've been hardworking to get to this point to get my first place. But the thing is I would rather be spending my time, for example, like if it takes an hour or two to cut your grass at like we'll say an hour, right? Traditional, whatever. I could be using that hour for, something else, right? I'm a big advocate for, time is money. And if it takes an hour to cut your grass at a rate of like $20 an hour, and you got to cut your grass about once a week, well, that's already $80, right? Not to mention the fuel and buying a lawnmower and whatever. Not saying it's more cost effective this way, but when you factor in, it also includes, doing, mulch or lawn care. I don't have 20 bushes. I only have like maybe 4 or 5. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's still just, it's not like it's 205 of dead money, right? Even if I'm paying $80 more than I should be, that's just what it is, what you're getting. Second thing is my mortgage principal and interest is around $1,900. We'll go over that here in a little bit. But the total amount for my home, that's going to be interest and your principal, okay? So they call it PI, but I'll call it IP, right? So those two numbers are already over $2,100, okay? Then property taxes are a little bit higher in Avon. We talked about it last video, right? Location, location, location. You have the, 22nd best district in Ohio. You have, just a five-star school district. You have, the Avon Commons with, name a store. It's literally within 5 minutes of my house, right? So it's going to be somewhere between $400 and $500 a month. It's still estimated of property taxes every single month, okay? So unfortunately, there's that, okay? We're not doing utilities because utilities really is what you make of it. You want to waste water, that's on you. You want to waste electricity, it's on you, right? That could always, fluctuate. Obviously gas and other stuff is pretty, sewer, that's pretty, fixed. But like utilities, we're not covering this YouTube video because it's just pointless, okay? It can vary per person. I'm a single person, not the biggest square foot. It's around 1,900 square feet. It's square feet. It's not like we have so much space to, light up, right? And then the last thing I believe they consider is home insurance. The good news for me is there's no basement for any like flooding or whatever. Also, because I'm only responsible for the inside of my house, the insurance is giving me less. I would say the estimate that the guy told me based on his expert and he got a free quote or whatever, it should be around $40 to $50 a month. Okay. So that is not that much. Now this is where, this is for insurance. Okay. Insurance. Okay. When you total all this up, it's going to be plus or minus $2,600 a month. Okay. But keep in mind that is including HOA, which you have to understand again, if it was around $2,400 but I still had to do work outside my house. Like again, doing, buying something to plow my driveway, doing lawn care, The HOA covers my roof if someone were to come down the road, right? So all this, you have to factor all this stuff in. But I want to just set the tone for what my payment is. That way we can educate people. Look, all these things I just laid out, how big is your property? That may affect your utilities, right? The bigger the square footage, the more utilities you'll be paying, right? You have to factor in insurance, taxes, property, and principal and interest, and then HOA, right? So with that in mind, let's go to a mortgage calculator. Please use ChatGPT. Okay. Well, actually, no. So before I go to ChatGPT to explain some things, okay, I want to secondly talk about just what I got out of incentive money. And I want to talk about resale against new construction. That's a big part of this video, right? It's the title of the video, right? So if I clear this, okay, how do I clear this? Okay, perfect. If I go to resale against new, let's talk about what I got versus the comparison, right? So the first thing I'll say for resale that is very, very good, like in a good way, is you can already have a home with the amenities. So you can literally move in. So when you move in, you can literally already have like things in your house. Like when you move in, you're moving into a great house. You already have maybe a fireplace, patio, you already have like a finished basement. There's so much to it that's already there. That's the number one thing. It's almost guaranteed, right? Another good thing about a resale home is you already know because a home inspection is required. I believe it is through the seller. That one I will admit, that one I'm not an expert. You're going to have to figure it out yourself. But whether it's you're paying for it, they're paying for it, for sure through home inspection, through things on the paper, they are required by law to tell you any plumbing issues, any issues with the home. So like you literally, like you're supposed to know like what you're getting into. So it's not like a new construction where it's like, hopefully you would still pay for an inspector either way, but like you might have issues that you don't know about because, let's just be honest here, new construction could have a fault, right? So I like that for resale, okay? Here is the problem with resale, okay? The problem with resale is you're not really getting any incentives. So any incentives, you might as well just cross it off, okay? The one thing that you might be able to do is negotiate the price and be like, all right, instead of like 370, can you do 360? And it all depends on the buyer's market. Because in a time like March and now where it's like the rates went up, last month they were dropping, but it was speculation of tariffs. I'm kind of scared. In moments when there is a buying freeze, that's probably going to be one of the only times when you can really go out there and actually negotiate like, hey, let me keep, that part of your house. Can I keep maybe some of those paintings? Because maybe it would be a hassle for you to get rid of them. Can I do this and this? Like any negotiation power you have in resale, like when you see a listing price, I want to maybe go and maybe bid for like, a little bit lower. That's really all you can really do. Hey, can you help me with closing costs? Hey, you pay this a closing cost, I'll do this, or let's do 50-50, right? That's all negotiations, okay? But what you're not going to get for the resale, and I'm almost positive for this, you are not going to get anything for the rate buy down. So rate is going to be the highest for a resale value. If I were to go right now and look up a 30-year mortgage for a resale home, you're not going to get the lending incentives that a new build would. So the reason why I wanted to go new was if I were to sit there, okay, and I mean, I could break it down on ChatGPT, right? In fact, we'll do it right now before I explain this other stuff, right? If I were to explain right now on ChatGPT, okay, let's say that I have a 370K mortgage, 370K mortgage, and let's say I have less things in the home versus a 370K home that's pretty similar, but it has all the amenities. It has a patio, it has this, okay? But let's crunch some numbers, okay? 370K mortgage, I was able to get a buy down rate with new construction. We'll explain that here in the video. You have a new construction home. They gave you so much in benefits. You were able to buy your rate down to like a 5.99, which is what I did. So 5.99% interest rate versus let's say you did a resale home, okay, and you were only, now they're over 7%. I mean, you know what? I'll be nice. I'll give you a 6.5% interest rate versus a 6.5% interest rate because it was a resale home. You couldn't get any, incentive. The rate is everything. So when they literally say things like, hey, we'll give you, all this great move-in stuff. You already have a patio, a fireplace, this home, you know what you're getting. It's going to be, it's only 10 years old, already in perfect condition still. This is going to be a home that'll last you centuries, right? But the thing is, if I compare these two numbers, 30-year fixed, okay, you would think that I'm saving money because I already have all the amenities in the home. But when you literally compare, okay, at the end of the 30 years, you just paid a whopping $46,000 more in 30 years, okay? And the monthly payment is also going to be over $120 more, okay? So at the end of the day, it's more of an idea of it's the same price. I could buy, one for the same price, but it has all the stuff I'd want. The rate is everything. $44,000 more in 30 years just because of the interest rate incentive. So that $44,000 in 30 years, I'll wait, a little bit for my deck. I'll wait a little bit for this. Let's not forget one thing too. That $44,000, I think, let's add $20K more of value. $64,000 more. You want to know why? Because it is priceless. It is priceless to have a brand new home because you literally know the furnace shouldn't go bad, the AC unit, the roof. There's factors in getting a new home that it's at least 20 grand of value. Not to mention it's priceless to design the home the way you want it. I have my own blueprints here, here, and there. And, we'll go over this, a little bit later in, the next video because how long this video already is. But you have to understand, dude, when you literally compare a resale home against a new construction, I was able to get, okay, and this is why you want to negotiate because they started at 4.5%. And I told them, I go, look, there's tariffs going on. There's a buyer freeze. I set it for what it was. And I said, look, you got to give me more. What's the best you can do? And she goes, the best we're able to legally give you for incentives is we're able to give you 6% of the home value, which was $373 towards the home. That ended up being $22K in incentives. That's why I was able to buy my rate down to 5.99 interest rate. And, I just forgot something. Holy shit. The resale home, I want you to add 5-10 grand or more because the closing costs aren't covered. My closing costs at a 5.99%, not only did I spend $12K in my incentive, it was just free, right? Free money they gave me to get a 5.99 interest rate, but also my closing costs, which were supposed to be around 8 grand, I'm only paying 1.4 grand. So call it 1.5 grand. So I'm paying 1.5 grand, okay? That's it for closing costs when most of Americans pay plus or minus 10 grand. And then I was able to get a 5.99 interest rate and I was able to buy out my PMI. I have no PMI, which was a $1,400 premium to buy out my PMI. So new construction gave me all those amenities, let's not say amenities. They gave me all those perks, whereas a resale home, you're able to get things, but at what cost? There's closing costs, which are hidden fees. You have a higher rate. It's a no-brainer, okay? Now, when we talk about things that matter for upgrades in a home, because my home started at $330, Okay, not to mention, I got very lucky, no lot premium. There was no lot premium because it was the final phase. When builders have a final phase, they want you in because they understand that there's other factors that make the last phase the worst phase. Appreciation factors. You may not be able to have as much of a selection of end unit versus middle unit versus for condos versus bigger lot versus not bigger lot. Like when they go in the end phases, you're not going to have as much of a pick. So they know that. So they kind of waive the lot premium. A lot premium was supposed to be $10,000. That was also waived for me. So when you think about new versus resale, if you shop new construction that gives you all these incentives, you have to be very careful of the resale home because you may have all the amenities and you may have all the things in the home. But the problem is it already a 10 to 20-year-old home? You know, wear and tear, roof, furnace, other stuff that might go bad over time, right? When they say this so-called 3 to 5% upkeep per year per home, depends what year the home was built, right? So today's video was supposed to do my best at explaining to you guys, because people might ask, Matt, why are you buying new? Why are you doing this? The numbers speak for themselves. When the mortgage is everything. So if you get a resale home with a deck or this and that, a finished basement, all this, all that. But the problem is, you get to understand, are you really just paying for it anyway from having a worse mortgage rate and paying for your closing costs versus not? That's what it is. We'll go from there. Peace.